Good morning, afternoon, or whenever it is where you are. Today I am going to talk about how to make a scene transition that is just like a crossfade. It is super trivial, but here's a secret. 1 hour ago, I started recording a video that had the same introduction where I said it is super trivial. And then I spent an hour debugging other issues in my game. So we're going to talk about scene transitions, and then we're going to talk about code maintainability. Okay, so scene transitions. The steps I have taken here included me having the scene switcher object, which I believe we've talked about before, but if not, I will show it to you. It is a game object that just has this script attached. It handles all of the scene switching within the game. Within the scene switcher, I had these load scene things, and they just directly did scene manager dot load scene, and then we pass the scene name in there. So let's go through the steps that I took to do this. The first thing I did was I added maybe we should go to a game scene to show this. Start level. I just added an empty canvas UI image thing that was very big, and I left it white because this is a Christmas game, but you can change it to any color you like in here. And then I added to that, so you can see that the scene is behind this. I added to that a animator component. And then what I did was I went to the animation window, animation, and then I clicked on my crossfade thing, and then it said here, if you would like to start animating crossfade, please click this button. And it created an animation for it. For that animation, I used keyframes. Keyframes are kind of a way of describing the current state of the thing that you're trying to animate at a point in time. So in this case, I'm animating the property, which I did by just going add property, image, color. And I'm just animating the color.a, which is the alpha or the kind of opacity of my image. And so at 0 seconds, the keyframe here describes the state where the alpha is 1, or it's completely opaque. But at 1 second, the alpha is 0, or completely transparent. So what the computer does nicely for me, because this is not Disney in the 1950s where we have to manually animate each moment, is it just transitions between those, as you can see kind of behind it. So it transitions nicely. So there it is, there's my animation, and then I went into the animation controller that would have been created when I clicked that button, but I just created it by adding the component to the crossfade thing, the animator here. And what I had was an arrow going to fade in, going to this, which was just called crossfade. I changed that to say fade into scene, because that made sense to me. And then I copy pasted it, and I made this one speed -1, because I wanted to do the exact same thing, but backwards. And I called this one fade out of scene. Do need to transition between the two, so I added a transition, right click, make transition, and on this transition I made it so that it triggered on this start trigger, which I made by clicking here, clicking trigger, and naming it start. So that's how my animation knows when to trigger, is that somewhere in code we're going to say, okay, trigger this animation. So that's how the animation works. And in our scene switcher, instead of just directly loading the scene in these functions, I have made a coroutine, which is it's a thing that can allow you to delay the code doing something for a little bit. It's more complicated than that, but sometimes it is better to just know what you need to know. So this is the coroutine that I've created. We set that trigger, so we trigger the trigger, press the button, and then we wait for the transition time amount of seconds, which I have set to 1 in editor, and then we do exactly what we were doing before, load scene, but with a passed in scene name string instead of just kind of doing it directly like we were doing, which we'll talk about, hard coding, things like that. So what that has left me with is, I hit play. Now I'm going to walk to where I load my next scene. Fades out. Fades back in. So obviously that's nice and beautiful. Luckily, like I said, animations are super kind of trivial to do when it's just something that's a canvas component like that, and it just needs to go from like a value of 1 to a value of 0. Super simple. But like I said, when I started making this video, I thought that it was going to take me about 10 minutes to do, and it has been over an hour since then. I've been working on this project for between an hour and 2 hours each week for the last 14 weeks. That means that a lot of my time each week is just catching up with like remembering what I did the last week. And there also used to be another collaborator on this project who has a kind of different approach to coding than me. Now, my troubles are of my own making. There are a couple things I could have done that would have prevented me from kind of getting a little bit confused and overwhelmed each week. One is discussing with that collaborator some code standards. Like, how are we going to do things? Like, are we really going to make a separate script for every single function? And the second one, which is related to that, is how are we going to document things? I have essentially no documentation about this code, or really even in this code. There are a couple comments here and there where I thought something might be a bit confusing to me in future. But past me, overestimated future me's ability to remember where everything is here. So the lesson that I'm kind of taking away from this, and that I hope anyone who watches this will take away from this, is assume that future you is very busy and has a lot going on and cannot come back to this code in a week and just know where everything is. There are some other things to do with kind of maintainability of code that I have been quite good with. That's kind of organizing my folders nicely. It does make sense to me where things are. At least I'm not kind of searching for where things are. I find where it is, but then I just don't understand what it is or what it does, and I have to like learn it as if I'm looking at the code for the first time. So there is a mini rant. I'm not going to go on for too long because, like I've said before, I have a time limit on these videos. But takeaways from this, because animations are so simple, I would prefer the takeaway from this to be document your code, and if you're working with someone else, have a frank discussion with them about expectations of each other's code and expectations around documentation and maintainability. And yeah, this might be the last video that I make for this little series. I have kind of moved on to, I've got a new job in more general software development. So look out for some videos as I fumble my way through a front-end stack, and have a wonderful whatever time it is for you. Thanks.